There are various issues throughout the United States that plague society and hinder the holistic growth of mankind. The various isms, whether it be nepotism, narcissism, sexism, racism, and other amongst these, are the roots of the problem that create a division in a society and a rift that affects the hearts and daily lives of American citizens abroad. The social agenda and problems that are associated with the isms are still present in the millennial generation. Racism, per se, is still a dominant factor in mainstream American culture, and that is due to different in-group and out-group negative stereotyping. There is an easy influence of regional and local color lines, family influence, and other means of separation that promotes the bias to be visible today in society. Some of these effects of this is violence, division amongst racial groups, hate crime, and an ill-mannered social essentialist thinking mentality. In order to fully understand stereotypes, first we must explore the foundation of stereotypes with children between the ages of 3 to 10 years old. It has been proven through research that children are able to sort through race starting at age 3. Bigler and Libin proposed that 3 core processes contribute to the formation of social categorization and stereotyping. A. Establishing the psychological salience of different person attributes. B. Categorizing individuals by salient dimensions. And C. Developing set of traits, behaviors, and emotions that are associated with a particular social group. Social categorization is what is used to drive racial stereotyping because it infers that race is an important factor in the dichotomy that we live in. Today we will focus on 2 components of this process in children, and that is the race salience and essentialist thinking. The minority group members who are more psychologically salient and distinctive will often be the targets of racial stereotyping caused by the majority race. Thus, I predict that European Americans are the majority race should exhibit more stereotyping with age, but that they would primarily focus and use it on negative out-group stereotyping opposed to in-group stereotyping. Great. When dealing with race salience, merely noticing a perceptual difference by which one can sort people does not mean that differences will be perceived as a meaningful, psychologically salient dimension. Labeling and both explicit and implicit use of category increased its salience. When dealing with race salience, merely noticing a perceptual difference by which one can sort people does not mean this difference will be perceived as a meaningful, psychological salient dimension. Labeling and both explicit and implicit use of category increased its salience. The dimension becomes salient. Research suggests that essentialist in-group bias and explicit and implicit attributions mold the development of stereotyping and prejudice pertaining to its dimensions. Essentialist thinking is the tendency to think of categories as immutable and informative. This is grounded in the belief that certain categories have important underlying essence that define the nature and properties. Immutability is one of the central components of essentialist thinking, and thus it is likely to be an important factor in the emergence of children's racial stereotypes. If children are able to form their thoughts of why race is important by the age of 3, then what does this say about society today? What does this say about racial stereotyping as a negative out-group cause? Children are able to sort through race by age 3 and execute racial stereotyping by age 6. What does this say about the dichotomy that we live in? It definitely says that racism is learned and taught through the practice of watching what's in your environment and through the use of reiterating what you've learned from your parents, family, friends, and at school.
When talking about racial conscience and essentialist thinking, I first look at the racial stereotypes relevance in a school setting, because children also intensify intergroup relations through enforcing self-segregation and acceptable stereotypes constant. When talking about racial conscience and essentialist thinking, I first look at racial stereotypes relevant to a school setting because children may also intensify intergroups relations with segregation and acceptable stereotypes domains. As it's been proven, children's stereotyping, both positive and negatives, increase with age. Main effects of age groups and children's in groups. As it has been proven, children's stereotyping, both positive and negative, increase with age. Main effects of age groups and children in groups. As it has been proven, children's stereotyping, both positive and negative, increase with age. Main effects of age group children in groups and out-group stereotyping emerge at different ages. All regression and correlation use ages as a continuous variable to racial constancy.
When talking about racism, discrimination, and negative out-group stereotyping against African Americans, the list goes on and on. But how do you stop a generation of thinking and a society's practice to eliminate racism and discrimination, not just against African Americans, but to all mankind? The answer is simple. We devalue the importance of race. One, we have more conversations about racism and discrimination to educate ones who are oblivious to it. A lot of people know that racism and discrimination exist, as Alan Johnson states, but yet they take the least resistive route because they're afraid of what can happen if they defy what society has normalized and marginalized. And that's a lot of what is happening in today's society. There's not enough people talking about racism and discrimination and saying that it is a problem, because once you can identify that it is a problem, then you can find solutions to address the situation. We must come together as a whole, as a country, to put back the democracy in our country. We must defy what society has said to be superior and inferior race. We must come together as one to defy any negative stereotypes caused against any person, persons, or groups, and in order to take a vow.